Hey, we've got Paul here from MangoMaps. What we are going to talk about is your company, MangoMaps. I think the first question we can start with is MangoMaps critical to any franchisor business?
What we're really focused on in terms of the solution is franchise territory mapping, the process of defining areas that can be reserved or granted to a franchisee either before opening a venue if it is does have a physical outlet, whether that's a gym or a cafe or something else. But it's really a way for them to engage with prospects, with the franchisees as part of their sales process. And so there's been an increasing awareness of the value of mapping out those territories rather than some arbitrary assignment of a group of suburbs or a location and a radius around it. So our solutions are really helping them attract quality prospects and really help them to be successful in those locations.
Yeah, excellent. What type of pain points are you adhering to from franchisors? I mean, obviously mapping is one of them. Does it help with projections, growth projections? Can you tell us a little bit about the benefits of such detailed mapping?
It could be from the really early stages. I mean, if they're going to a new city, for example, they might want to know, how many units might that city support, and then once they launch in that city, helping them to, the goal is really to identify areas and to demarcate areas that allow somebody to operate viably in that area. So to give them an area that's got a good, market that they can address, not pack them in too tight so they're competing against each other. And so there's sort of a win-win in terms of the long-term success for the franchisee and, of course, the franchisor. So we're really helping to solve that problem of not giving away too big of an area that can't be serviced by a single operator, and also not packing them in too tight, such that they're competing against each other and there's a lot of sort of grumbling about cannibalization.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of issues that we're helping to solve for franchisors.
And what's your background and how did you get into mapping and specifically MangoMaps?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an old school geographer, so I've been involved in mapping for more than 20 years, in all aspects of mapping, traditionally working with, other professionals, engineers, town planners, people like that. But more recently with our software platform, really working with people who maybe the mapping is not necessarily a day-to-day part of their life, but it's an important part of their business and as a decision-making tool. So really helping to bring together the software platform, the data, the demographic data that's used to drive these systems, and teaching them a little bit how to think strategically about planning for territories, how to present territories to prospects, and really sort of forming that relationship with them to help them to grow their franchise.
So what are some of the features that you have that are available to franchisors, so sort of noting down to the layers of the program?
A lot of people will come to us, maybe they've got a couple of existing sites that are successful, they have some ideas about what success looks like. But really what we're helping them to do is to identify, if I'm successful in this place, how can I be successful in other places? Or what's the likelihood of success in other places? So a lot of that's down to the data. So we have, good data available in Australia that's, from the census primarily, the ABS data. So that's one of the core components of the system. But then it's the tools and reports that allows them to, answer basic questions. So, how many people between, 19 and 44 live within, 5 kilometers or 15 minutes drive of this location. So it's a decision support tool. It's a tool that they might visit regularly. It could be daily as they're doing their sort of planning and talking to prospects and things like that. And so it's a suite of tools. And I guess the final component is really that presentation side of things. So once they've identified an area, decided on how large it should be as a territory, for example, they can then take that and the platform has a way to present that to the prospect. That's a way of engaging with them about the area, getting them excited about that place, maybe highlighting why this place has some characteristics that make it more sort of suitable than other places or has more potential than other places, and helping them really to attract those prospects, sign them up, and ultimately they become a franchisee.
Also, the Australian population is evolving quite, I mean the typical sort of applicant for a franchise 5 years ago has probably changed till today. MangoMaps is quite important to have that understanding of the evolution of your population and your target market.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting to look at how things have changed. So in Australia, the most recent census was 2021, and the one prior to that is 2016. And if you look at most, state capitals, that sort of urban fringe has been growing really, really rapidly. The typical growth rates for that 5-year period are up to 30% population growth. So that's huge, and that's really interesting for a number of reasons. There's often young families moving to those areas. So the kinds of goods and services that they're after, the kinds of businesses that are successful in those places are going to be particular to those places, which may be a bit different to some of the more established areas. And also as a franchisor, even if the population's not quite there yet, if you move into an area or work with your franchisees to look at moving into these areas, these future growth areas, you're going to sort of capture some of the market there, build loyal customers. So looking at growth and looking at where the growth is headed is really important to that planning process.
You talked about some of the errors that franchisors make when not using a mapping system like MangoMaps, and one of them was that the territories are too generous and it doesn't make sense from a logistics point of view and from a number of sort of layers point of view. What are some of the other sort of errors that you see from not properly considering mapping?
If you look at a Google Maps, a city looks all the same. Various patterns, there's parks, there's place names, there's freeways and roads, but in reality there's all these sort of layers of information that are sort of hidden there in the demographics of who lives there. So there's all kinds of trends that can be brought out in the mapping. So for example, you might see young singles living in the sort of the inner city areas. You might see an older demographic in the more coastal areas or the more expensive suburbs. And depending on where your product or service is geared, you might look for a greater density of those people in those places. Income's another one that you can consider. Mm-hmm. It can go on, you can look at things like the professions of those people, education levels. The census is quite broad in its scope. It helps to sort of narrow it a bit to make comparing different areas more, if you've got 20 or 30 factors, it's quite hard to compare two areas. But once you've picked out your sort of key factors, you can identify areas across the city where these patterns emerge. And, as the operator or that franchisor, having some understanding of where you're going to do well, to incorporate that into your territory planning process, maybe releasing in phases, so release in the areas with the highest potential first, or guide franchisees to look at those places first, just to help with that early traction, particularly for emerging brands or any brand, in fact, that wants to do well, just to understand what drives success. So that's really what the mapping brings, all these patterns and trends that exist in populations that you can start to understand across the city.
Yeah, so it's critical to any sort of business strategy.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just population. I mean, you can know how many people live in an area, but what kind of people, how old are they, what are their interests, what are their spending patterns? You can't know all of it, but you can sort of infer some of it based on the demographics. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly better than just arbitrarily drawing an area or grouping together a few postcodes or suburbs, because you're going to miss out on opportunities if you just take a very sort of light approach to it. And it doesn't take much effort and energy to go that next step and to bring in some of that data. And, we try and make it as easy as possible. Mm-hmm. And we do believe it is quite accessible to get into these solutions. Yeah, so that's really what we're aiming for.
Excellent. Is there, I guess the next question would be, look, if I'm an emerging franchisor, I've been running a business, it's been quite profitable in one location. How do I prepare for a conversation with MangoMaps? I mean, what sort of details do I need? How would someone sort of go about it?
I mean, the first thing to understand is that it's a process. So the questions to be asked will change and evolve over time. So you don't necessarily need to come to us with much. It might just be a basic idea. And what we'll do is we'll work with the franchisor to maybe pose some additional questions and then work with them about how to answer those questions. So questions like, how far are people willing to travel to get to one of my venues? what's a typical demographic profile in terms of age, income, sex, and things like that. They may have an inkling of that already, but there may be some things they haven't thought of, but it's a way of sort of putting it all together, almost as a template for success. And particularly if you go from one city to another, if you're unfamiliar with another city, to identify similar areas, where those patterns exist. And, the relationships that we form with franchisors are sort of multi-year. It may be that their growth stage changes over the years, the way that they think about development of the business changes. Maybe they want to go for a more aggressive expansion, for example. So we're there for whatever stage they're in to help support that, help them ask and answer those questions that are critical to the planning process and help them be successful in attracting franchisees.
You work with all different types of verticals. Can you give me some examples of some of the sort of clients you work with?
Yeah, I mean, it's right across the board. I mean, as you know, Australia is the most heavily franchised country in the world. And so there are franchises in all kinds of industries, from early childhood care, quick service restaurants, elderly care, nursing, fitness, is a huge one. Fitness, well-being, recovery, those types of areas. Yeah, I think that home services, gyms, and all of the gyms brands are all franchises. So yeah, we work with people in many different sectors. Their requirements and are always a bit different. If you're working in early childhood care or you've got early childhood programs, you're looking for a particular demographic. If you're in elderly care, you're looking for another demographic. That's pretty obvious. But there's ways of sort of teasing that out of the data and maybe adding a few more data points to fully describe and compare areas. But yeah, it's great to work with people and to bring our knowledge and with their ideas and to help them to sort of build out and launch and be successful as an operator or as a franchisor.
Yeah, thank you. Can you share with us some success stories?
Yeah, we're pretty well known in Australia. I would say a good maybe half of all the fitness brands we're working with. There's some really exciting new ones. Revel is one of the ones that's doing really well right now. REVL, and they're out of Adelaide, and S30 is another new concept. There's a lot of Australia's producing some really great fitness concepts that are doing really well. A lot of them are then moving internationally, New Zealand, Singapore, and even to the US. So these really young emerging brands are really exciting to work with. They've got a lot of energy. They've got a lot of new ways of thinking about things. A lot of them are veterans of the fitness industry as well. So they've got a good understanding of the space and they've got a product that's unique. So yeah, those are some of the brands that we're really enjoying working with at the moment.
Excellent. Just to how do your plans work? So you obviously the initial mapping's important, the initial consultation, but then obviously the ongoing work is also important.
Yeah, it depends on what the growth objectives are for the business. Some businesses just want to grow a bit more organically. Maybe they'll start off in one city. Maybe they've got 5 or 6 different areas they'd like to open in a particular year. We can work with them on that. Other brands might want to go nationally, do a big sales and marketing push and really go for it and just have territories that are ready to sell in every market or, every state market, for example. Again, we can help them with that. So we can size a solution, depending on their stage and their growth objectives. Some people want to grow really quickly. Other people want to, get some early success, organic success before they really scale up. And so we're able to offer a solution that fits with their growth stage. And I think that flexibility is one of the things that people really like about us.
Fantastic, Paul. That's a really good summary and some critical points for franchisors in planning and strategy and being able to understand the different territories, being able to converse with prospects about the growth potential of each of these territories. It really is where the game is going, and MangoMap plays a very important part in that. Thank you very much for your time today, Paul.
Thanks, Frank. It's been really great to speak with you, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.